Hi, everybody. This is a bonus episode of the Oversteer podcast here at halftone.fm. Now, for our regular audience, I will speak Greek. Οπότε, το τωρινό επεισόδιο είναι ένα bonus επεισόδιο του Oversteer. Για όποιον μπερδεύεται με το ότι θα ακούσει αγγλικά ή ακούει αγγλικά στην εισαγωγή για περίπου 40 με 45 λεπτά μέχρι το τέλος του podcast, είναι ένα bonus επεισόδιο με έναν αγγλόφωνο Αμερικανό καλεσμένο, οπότε είναι μια παρένθεση που θα ξανακούσετε και σε άλλες εκπομπές που έχουμε έναν καλεσμένο ο οποίος δεν μιλά ελληνικά και δεν έχουμε επαφή με αυτή τη γλώσσα. Οπότε σας ευχαριστούμε εάν μείνετε, εάν φύγετε τα ξαναλέμε σε επόμενο επεισόδιο του Oversteer. So, I have a very special guest here with me. His name is, and I practiced it because I have to practice it because it's half American, like it has to sound American. It's Tim Weigel. Hi,
good.
Tim.
Hi, Dimitris. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for coming and
Thank you for
accepting
having
the
me. Glad to be
invitation.
here.
Sure. I mean, I will say that, and I will have to let you introduce yourself, but one thing I will say is that Tim is an American F1 fan, and they are like not a lot of them.
That's true. There are not a whole lot of us here. It's kind of a lonely sport to be a fan of in much of the United States.
So Tim writes for the Pit Crew Online. You have your own blog right now. I mean, you have a new blog that you just started a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I do have a new blog. I have some different interests in motorsport than the bread and butter of the Pit Crew Online's work. So I thought it would be nice to have my own space where I can write more about things like the economics and the politics of motorsport that are maybe a little bit further away from what the core racing focused stuff at the Pit Crew is about. But, I still, I hang out online with the Pit Crew folks, and I've been on their podcast before and I talk with all those guys, and, we have a good time with them. Just trying to establish some editorial independence,
Yeah. We will also leave the according links down in the notes because we do have podcast notes. So I will ask you after the podcast to send me the links from the blog and all the stuff you write and participate in order for people to have the actual chance to read you and hear you. And your day job is not actually covering motorsport or F1, right?
No, I am a database administrator. I work for a company that does telecommunication services, and I am a senior administrator for the SQL Server platform at my company. So I work a lot with data, a lot of IT stuff.
Mm-hmm. Which is not something that, my day job is actually F1 journalism, but your day job is completely different. So one personal question before we start with the podcast topics. How do you manage being a motorsport fan and having a voice in two different sites and your own blog and all that stuff and actually doing your day job?
It's really just a matter of making the time. I enjoy my work fairly well, but I try to keep hobbies and interests outside of it because I know a lot. I know a lot of people who especially in the United States. I don't know how prevalent it is in the rest of the world, but I have a lot of people, especially in my professional circles, that are a lot of their spare time they spend doing professional development things or writing about data things, and there's nothing wrong with that, having an interest in what you do for a living, and fair play to them. But I do try to keep some interests fairly far away from my work because it helps just keep me balanced. And my background academically is in the humanities. I have a bachelor's degree in Asian studies. I did my thesis work at Colorado College on the Shugendo religious sect in Western Japan. And so my academic background is not in technology. And then I was in the master's degree program at the Joseph Corbell School of International Studies at the University of Denver in international relations, where my focus was on non-traditional international security. So I have a fairly wide humanities background. I sort of wound up doing data work by accident, and it turned out that I liked it and I was good at it. And it pays well. So it was kind of a win all around. But it's definitely not, so journalism and Formula One motorsport in general, very much a hobby. I would love to someday be able to make some money doing it and actually support myself with it, but that day is a long way away.
Yeah, but you were a pretty interesting podcast host slash candidate because podcast yes, sorry, not host slash candidate because you really, I've read your pieces. We worked together for a while before I had to stop because my day job here in Greece is a bit demanding. But I used and I used to read about your stuff when we work together. I still read whenever you upload something. It's been a while, but I will wait for your next next article.
Yeah, sometimes life takes us in interesting places, and we can't always devote the time to things that we would like, for sure. But now I'm very glad. As you mentioned, I'm setting up my own blog. I'm trying to get myself back into motorsport journalism and writing because, I had in my personal, it was a choice between, when I had some significant personal issues. Unfortunately, some of the hobbies had to fall by the wayside because I had to attend to keeping a job, and then I had my personal life to deal with, and so some things had to go. And unfortunately, but now I'm very, very much enjoying being more and more involved in motorsport again.
I was thinking about talking, sometimes I have the not so pleasant writer's block. You want to write something, maybe you have to write something, and you can't get yourself doing it. You're stuck. Could the 7th world title of Lewis Hamilton actually be a very good start of, not personally for you, but so many things that we can say about this achievement? I mean, I was a child when Michael Schumacher won everything, and that was my hero back in the day. I used to have posters of him and all that stuff. I have not kept it a secret. I was, and I still feel like a fan of Schumi, but
well, of course,
Lewis,
he was one of the greats.
Yeah, but Lewis, he's now one of the greats, right? I mean, it's amazing.
It really is. I mean, I am so pleased with what he's accomplished, and especially being, an ethnic minority. The UK is certainly very, very, majority Caucasian and all that. So, especially coming from a harder economic background, and knowing all of the work his dad put in and his family put in to help support him through karting and on up through the ranks. And I mean, to see him come from that background and be on top of the world of motorsport it's incredible. It is so amazing. And one of the things I've liked about Lewis Hamilton is even when even when his personal life was maybe not something I would do, I really appreciated that he lived his life the way he wanted and turned up and was winning races. And he did a lot of the things that, I remember a lot of his personal life, especially, his dating life and all that, and his partying and his general high-flying jet set lifestyle got a lot of criticism in F1. But he kept turning up and winning races. And so clearly it didn't do him any harm. And he certainly brought a bit of interest into F1 that I think helped broaden its appeal to different audiences. But yeah, I mean, he really is. I mean, he's amazing to watch on track, and watching him over the past 10 years or so that I've been really paying attention to F1, watching him over that time grow and mature as a person and as a driver, it's been great. And now that he's up there among having 7 times world champion, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
And hats off to Nico Rosberg for taking 1 year out of the middle of that. I mean, and that
he
was
would be an 8-time world champion, maybe.
Right. Or, so my hat is definitely off to Rosberg. But yeah, I mean, it's just been a privilege to watch Hamilton in the new era of F1. And I think too, it's good to see Hamilton embodying this era, especially because of the technical changes in the hybrid era. A lot of people, although it's funny being in my mid 40s myself, I see a lot of people saying, "Oh gosh, Formula One was best during X time," and you look at how old they are, and you realize that maybe that was when they were a teenager.
Yeah.
And so everybody, we all like things that happened during those formative years. But for me, it's really good to see Lewis Hamilton defining this new era of F1. And I am very much a fan of not only the racing on track, but I love the technology. I am perhaps rare in that I think the hybrid era is awesome. I love just how technical and complex these cars are.
And he seems to master it. I mean, he's speaking to the car. I think the last time he didn't finish a race, as of the time of recording at least, because it may take some weeks to upload it. But as of after the Turkish Grand Prix, Hamilton hasn't had the DNF for the past 3 championships he has won.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And knowing that too, we're finally settling into the time under the new regulations, just before they start drastically changing again, of course, where we're seeing track records fall, where we're seeing speed records and lap time records being broken that people thought in the past were unassailable, and that these would stand forever because the V10 era or what have you. And I admit, I do like the sound of the big V10s from past eras, but I also really do like the sound of the hybrid F1 cars. And I'm sure I'll get some hate mail off that. That's fine. I'm putting my opinions out there in public. But then I also like the way the Formula E cars sound, the particular electric whine that they have. It just makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up.
That's something different.
But again, I'm very much a fan of the technology of the racing. And I love watching the drivers race the track, not just race the other drivers. I love them competing against the actual track. I love them competing against the cars. I love watching all of these things that come into what is modern Formula One.
Are people correlating maybe the past and the big screaming V10s and V12 engines and all that stuff with Michael Schumacher and all these legends, or Mika Hakkinen? Maybe that's something I try to wrap my head around, because I'm too young to actually understand the affection they feel towards this era, which I was either really young to understand or not even born yet. I mean, in Greece, for example, Ferrari and Schumacher are like the combination, the best. They cannot be. No one can beat them in ever. Like in the next 100 years, no one will ever beat in their minds this combination. Do you
Sure.
think people, associate the era, the driver, and they think, oh, the era is not of my liking, or is, crap? Maybe some people are that drastic on their saying, and maybe that's Lewis Hamilton wins with a PlayStation car. Like he not doesn't
Right.
drive. He has a controller. The real men were back in the day when Ayrton Senna or Alain Prost or Nigel Mansell or Michael Schumacher. Do you think this is actually something people do, correlating the driver, the era, and like if the era is not of my personal liking, the driver is not good at all?
Yes, I think people absolutely do that. And I think to a degree it's normal human behavior because as we get farther and farther in time away from those days, we forget the things that would make us annoyed with a driver's performance in a given race, or we forget reliability issues that may have had us, shouting at the television.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so as time goes by, just like we do this, humans just do this. We've done this since time immemorial, where it becomes the good old days. And I think in 20 years, when people look back on the hybrid era in F1, Hamilton will be revered in that same uncritical way by future generations or people who are, just now becoming interested and aware of motorsport and Formula One in particular. So I think that it will be if we come back in 2040, if we sit down in 20 years on November 21st, 2040, and see, okay, what do people think of Hamilton now? We should set a reminder to come back in 20 years.
We may have a different perspective. I mean, I did find a YouTube clip from a seasonal review from the Greek television back in the day, in 2001, actually. And people in Greece came to learn F1 from maybe the start of the 90s, but in 2000, 2001, a big Greek TV channel, actually purchased the rights to broadcast F1 on free television, and people. I think that's why Ferrari is so revered here in Greece, because we started watching F1 back in the day, and that's really that what you said was really something that maybe instinctively I thought that when you distance yourself, when you're like 10 or 20 years away from that. I watched that review clip, and I watched the different races and all that stuff, because in a review in 1 hour you see all the season coming by your eyes, and I'm like, yeah, I can feel like I remember myself watching this as a very young boy, and I feel something different watching it. Different than when I'm watching F1 right now. If I watch the 2020 Portuguese Grand Prix or the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, I don't feel the same thing. So people really do that. But it's not fair to Lewis. I mean, as you said, he has really redefined so many things in F1. He's a black F1 driver, which and he's just the second one actually. An American was the first one, Willie T. Reeves. He's so rare.
And there's a household name for you. Everybody knows him, right? Yeah, right. Nobody knows who that is except for hardcore stories.
No. I mean, maybe black F1 fans. Some Americans like you, and enthusiasts, of course, like myself or other journalists in all over the world. Yeah, because we just came about, and we didn't wait for the Netflix documentary. We have read about him or something like that. So yeah, basically, Hamilton is he's dominating. His domination, in my personal opinion, is not different that the domination we used to watch from Schumacher or Vettel at the start of the previous decade, 2010 and to 2013. But people are really, I think people are very easily dismissive of one's accomplishments
Yeah.
sometimes, which is,
And
yeah,
it's funny because when people talk about how, oh, Lewis's dominance is boring now. I mean, yeah, they sure didn't mind when Red Bull was winning every race. They sure didn't mind when Ferrari was winning every race.
yeah,
So it's like, okay, guys, it'll be so, like, yeah, it's something where as time passes, this will flow back into that golden era of
yeah,
motorsport where all past days go to eventually.
yeah.
We'll forget all the negatives and we'll just remember the good things. And I think, yeah, that's okay sometimes.
Yeah, it's as you said at the beginning, it's part of human nature in some aspects, and you know, you are a motorsport fan, and you are an experienced you have an experienced eye because having having watched F1 and being an American F1, I'm sure you have been watching or you have watched or your social cycle has watched the big American racing series like IndyCar or NASCAR
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, because here, well, that's a bit dismissive from my end and stereotypical, but in Europe we don't. We think NASCAR is for the hillbillies and IndyCar is for those who don't have enough talent for F1, which is
Well,
generalizing.
I, I do have to say that super speedway racing, I appreciate the technical achievements and I appreciate the physical achievements of the drivers. But aside from watching some of the big marquee races in NASCAR or IndyCar, they don't interest me the same
Yeah,
as Formula One does. Because, I mean, yeah, super speedway racing, it's its own specific, you have your own challenges. You have to set your cars up a certain way. You have to, your practice, your mindset is very, I think, somewhat different. But watching the oval track for a couple of hours doesn't do it for me. It doesn't excite me in the way that like the IndyCar road races, the road or the circuit tracks,
yeah,
or Formula One or IMSA or the World Endurance Championship or even a lot of other lower level, smaller motorsport
yeah,
series that race on street circuits or just more traditional circuits. I appreciate their technology. I appreciate that a stock, although I appreciate that stock cars are engineering marvels just as much as an F1 car is, and that the Indy cars. I mean, I think the joke is to me has long among my social circle been that the Indy cars look like Gillette, the razor company, has made them because they just get more and more little aero elements. So it's like they got a marketing partnership with Gillette to do their
yeah.
aero work. Which is not fair. I mean, it's a dismissive thing and it's unkind because they put a lot of effort.
Because
But it's its own special technical discipline that just doesn't excite me as much.
yeah, and engineers have souls too in IndyCar,
Yeah,
and feelings, they get hurt.
right.
Yeah,
And it's one of those where I can say I can make joking criticism. It looks like a disposable razor blade.
yeah.
But on the other hand, if you asked me to make one, could I do it?
Nope.
No, I could not make I could not make the aerodynamic setup for an Indy car, but then I also could not make a razor blade either. So
Yeah,
here
so
I am making fun of things that are completely outside my abilities.
well, I mean, you're not the first one, you're not the last one, and
Oh, I know.
I'm certain that it's all part of the joke, and Formula One really is desperate to grab the American audience's attention.
Hmm.
The Miami Grand Prix was a very big and I don't know ambitious plan, and I
Yeah.
don't know if you know the latest on this, but uh, um, some residents from the Miami-Dade County, which is the one that will encompass the circuit, the street circuit in Miami, some of the residents filed a lawsuit that said that the circuit should not be constructed there because, first of all, it's racist because most of the residents around the circuit are minority, Latinos, the Florida non-Caucasian people, Latinos, maybe
Right.
from Cuba or Puerto Rico, black people. So yeah, they think that it's racist because they will not be able to go to the grocery store, which is yeah. Uh, I mean, it's not racist, it's actually inconvenient. And yeah, but they try to make it, they try to fight the residents, they try to fight. The only people that support the Miami-Dade race, F1 race, are the big corporations, and for a limited time, Miami Dolphins, the NFL team, and the because it was going to be around the Hard Rock Stadium and all that stuff. So all in all, my point is USA really tries to, actually F1 tries to get USA's heart, and USA is like the really mean high school girl that is depicted in many teenage movies from Hollywood.
Yeah.
So what's your thought? Will there ever be a time in USA that the majority of you will love F1 and actually support it?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't think so, because it is a very European series. Simply, not only because of course, the a lot of the races occur in Europe, but they also occur in other parts of the world. But it has a very European to Americans. It seems, it's very, very European. The rules and the structure and the governance and the race control and
the roots,
everything. It just, the roots of it are very different. I mean, NASCAR in the United States famously had its roots in bootlegging and just, these guys who were running alcohol during Prohibition would buy these cars and soup them up and to outrun the police. And so our traditions here around motorsport are definitely a bit different. And F1, I think, suffers a bit from Bernie Ecclestone's real push to make it a very elite thing. I recall a few years back when social media was really becoming a powerful marketing tool for a lot of things, how Bernie essentially said he did not care what a 20-year-old thought about F1.
Yeah.
And he did not care what they were saying on Twitter and Facebook about Formula One, because that wasn't his target demographic. His target demographic is older, rich men who buy Rolexes. And he was very upfront that for him, it was all about the money. And that attitude gets noticed, I think, and where we have sort of a snobbery associated with Formula One. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the wonderful movie Talladega Nights.
Yeah, I am.
The Legend of Ricky Bobby. Look at how the French driver's character was portrayed.
Yeah.
And of course, it's an exaggeration. It's a caricature. It's taken to an extreme degree. And Sacha Baron Cohen was just brilliant. It's a hilarious movie, and I love it.
Of course.
But like all good satire, it exposes a truth. And there is definitely a perception of F1 among a lot of Americans as being a very fancy, elite European thing. And now that doesn't mean, of course, that we don't enjoy the hell out of it when it's at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, or, a lot of us will watch when it was at Indy. But yeah, we certainly enjoy the US Grand Prix. I love, Canada, Mexico, anything in this
Your time
hemisphere
zone. Yeah.
when I don't have to get up at 2 a.m. to watch.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
thing, you know?
Yeah, but think of my side when I want to watch an NBA show, a game, and I have to
Right.
stay up like 3 a.m. in the morning watching LeBron dunking on innocent people. So
Right.
basically, lives is not good when time zones interfere. But
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, continue your thought. Complete your thought.
But so I think that some of it definitely has an image issue, and further the direction. And I know this has gotten a lot of discussion in particularly in the UK press, because that's where the pit crew folks are mostly in the UK, and so I certainly have much more insight into the mindset of the motorsport community there.
Yep.
But the way Formula One is moving so far away from broadcast television and into specialized, expensive cable packages, because that does take it away. It does make it harder to watch.
Yeah.
And especially, but I have the same problem here, because if I wanted to watch DTM, if I wanted to watch the German touring cars, I would have to find a way to get around the issues around the commercial rights holders in the United States, because the rights holder in the US did not broadcast races live. They did not broadcast races on both days of a race weekend. They only broadcast the race on Sunday, and there was a significant time delay. So technically they could say, yes, we carry the Deutsche Tourenwagen series, but no one can actually watch it. And that's one of the problems with F1 here. There are far more homegrown options that are much easier to watch. And if Liberty Media and whomever has stakes in F1 wants to penetrate the American market more, they're going to have to compete a lot more in terms of offering the races
And exposure.
and exposure, and providing them at times that people can watch. And the problem is, though, that there's always going to be something local running that they can show.
Yep.
Or they can show the time delayed Formula One, where in the era of social media and instantaneous communication, it suffers almost from this, well, we already know what happens. We can catch the quick recap before NASCAR.
Yeah.
We can catch before the IndyCar race. We can see the little highlight reel from the Grand Prix. So there's certainly some trouble around that. And I think, a few years back when, in the inaugural season with Liberty Media, when they had the boxing announcer at Circuit of the Americas, the let's get ready to rumble. And yeah. I'm ashamed. I had the guy's name in my head 30 seconds ago.
Oh my God. Yeah. He's so famous. He's actually so famous.
And I remember a lot of Americans.
Michael Buffer.
Yes, thank you. A lot of my fellow American fans, we loved the lead up to that U.S. Grand Prix.
Oh, you did?
Because it was so American. It was ridiculously American. I mean, I could take or leave the flyovers and the military and the prayers and the invocations and all that, but having him, even as he messed up some of the drivers' names.
He did.
It was, but just having a very American presentation. It was cheesy, it was corny, it was cliched, and it was amazingly fun for us. So, and I think there's a certain amount of that the rights holders could do. And it's important that they not take away from the substance of the racing. It's important. Also, a big factor in American sports is the television ads, the commercial breaks. You miss so much when they cut to commercial.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, boy. I hate you for that, because I try to watch an NBA game, and it's like in Europe, the game is shorter, first of all. It's 40 minutes instead of 48. And other than that, you have TV timeouts. Like, what? I mean, stop. Like, don't try to... powered by Dimitris Bizas workshop. Dimitris Bizas, your best workshop ever in Texas, or I don't know, Mississippi or Missouri. I don't care. I really don't care. I'm from Athens, Greece. My groceries come from a supermarket near my. I don't care. Just stop.
Right.
But we take the feed that the NBA gives to everyone here. We have coverage in Greek television. I don't steal. I don't illegally stream NBA, although I used to, but now I don't for legal purposes. I do not.
Sure.
Uh, if any
Yeah.
lawyers, if the legal office of NBA listens to this podcast, first things first, thank you. After than that, I do not illegally stream. And we take and that's a huge thing that we really complain. And I totally get your end of the argument that, oh, you don't appeal to the American audience. And I have to tell you, without being dismissive, or I don't want to offend you, but we found the Michael Buffer announcements the most American in the worst way thing ever. We hated it. We
Oh, I
actually hated it.
understand. I understand that.
You took the most, you know, um, the most peaceful time before the calm before the storm. You know, the drivers that concentrate and they try to get in the mood and they wear their helmets and they talk to their trainers and all that stuff, and you run with the bald eagle and the stars and stripes and over the land of the free. We don't care, you know. So I get it because F1 is so European, is so European. And I totally get the argument that not only you, but other Americans surely have, because they see, first of all, no American driver since Alexander Rossi, and he only participated in one season, and he was in the worst team of the grid. One American team, which technically is American, but it's not. You know,
I have thoughts about that. I've written about that before.
Yeah,
where,
it's not really American. I mean, it has the American funding and all that stuff, but well, I mean, it's as American as I am, and I'm not American. So,
well, you know, it's a way for Gene Haas to sell machine tools in Europe, and that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
but
totally
I would like to see a lot more. I would like to see a lot more involvement from the United States side of it in the Haas F1 team for sure. And of course, I certainly don't mean that to appeal to the American audience. I certainly would not ask for, you know, every race to have that over the top level of Americanness. But it's important that that we have for the American audience there. It's tricky because it's almost it's kind of I'm trying to articulate, but it's because not a lot of Americans follow F1. There's a lot of explanation that they on the American feeds, like when NBC was the rights holder, they had to do a lot of digressions and they had to do a lot of explanation because not many people know that. But the problem, of course, is for someone like me who follows F1 very closely, a lot of these digressions and explanations and beautiful, you know, nice little cutaway shots of the host city and little explanations about the host country. These were incredible. And of course, this all happens during the race. They just would cut away from the race and talk about, you know, Baku, or talk about Monaco, or talk about Sydney, you know, talk about Melbourne, I should say, not Sydney, Melbourne. You know, all of these things. And it takes away from the race for those of us that are really into it. And the people that are really into it, of course, we're the ones going to complain. And so,
they were like,
how do you?
I wonder what's the race.
It's a really tough balance to strike, and I don't want to minimize how difficult it is to take an international sport that hasn't traditionally been popular somewhere and present it in a way that will satisfy both the enthusiasts and the casual viewer. It's not like you know, as we call it soccer, or as the rest of the world calls it football, where, you know, you can go to Walmart here and buy a soccer ball and learn to play soccer. Because, you know, football here has taken on you know, it's growing in popularity. There are, you know, major league football team, Major League Soccer is a fairly popular sport now, and a lot of that growth was more organic because a lot of people just started playing soccer when they would watch the Premier League or whatever and say, "Hey, that looks kind of cool."
Yeah.
And so kids would start playing soccer, and it becomes a more popular sport from the ground up.
Yeah.
Whereas with motorsport, that's a little harder to do because of the incredible investment and infrastructure required to support it. And
you can't start racing because you saw it,
Yeah, it's one of those things where you really can't buy your way in. Even Lance Stroll has to perform on track to some degree, and to his credit, he's doing a lot better than he used to. So at least it's not just because his dad bought him a team, as people like to say.
Yeah.
He actually is holding his own okay on the grid, so good for him. But or Pastor Maldonado, there's a polarizing
with the Venezuelan
oil money. So it's something where it's a very difficult thing, and especially when there are long-term, very culturally embedded, very popular motorsport series here that are happening during local time zones to watch, where you can go to a race
exactly
where it's not just a once-a-year prospect, and I think we have a lot of much, of course, being the United States is a physically very large country.
It's a continent.
So, we span the middle part of the North American continent. And so we have it's trying to think of a good way to couch it where we would have to have more than just a couple of races here. And I understand that's one of the things they were trying to do with the Miami Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And some of the other ideas, the perennial attempts at a New York City Grand Prix.
To catch the East Coast time zone, the East Coast, the Atlantic Ocean, the beaches, the ocean scenery. I mean, because COTA is like in the middle of the desert of out of Austin. I mean, it's not like in a place, populated or something.
It's a great track. It's a cool circuit. They do a lot of neat stuff there, not just F1, but when that's like the big when that's the big race in the American mind, and I mean, a lot of us, of course, watch Canada and we watch Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. And if you live in the northern states of US, I mean, you could actually travel to Montreal or fly to Montreal.
Yeah, you could go to
if you're from Minnesota or Boston or any of these northern Maine.
And
well, if you're from Maine, you don't like F1. You don't like F1 if you're from Maine, but I digress.
Well, and even prior to COVID, getting to Austin was not logistically difficult from the United States because we do have good air infrastructure.
Yeah.
Despite the airlines doing their best to make life hard for everybody, we do have good air infrastructure here. So it's not impossible. It would not be impossible for someone to say, take Friday and Monday off from work and fly into fly into Austin Thursday night, Friday morning, and then fly back Sunday night, Monday afternoon. It certainly is doable, but we would really, I think, need more races than just the small handful that happen in our time zones. And the trick, of course, which might be a good segue into the 2021 calendar, is where do you fit those in, right?
Yeah.
Because I think just personally, I think there are too many races in 2021. I think they need to pare the calendar back. They are going to run the teams and their support staff, especially the pit crews and the race support staff. They're going to run them ragged. And even though the cost caps don't touch that as much, that still is going to favor the big incumbents, your Red Bulls, your Mercedes, your Ferraris, who have the deep pockets. It's going to kill the smaller teams in a lot of ways, but that's another topic.
Because
another discussion.
Before we go to the 2021 calendar, I have to ask you because I don't want to make a political statement, but I mean, you are American, and the US had a bit of awkward moment when George Floyd was murdered. And I believe
Yes.
that we agree that he was murdered, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't say killed. If he was killed, it would be like an accident or, he was murdered. It was a murder. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
when the BLM movement really took the US by storm, and we saw that actually even the outside world, the European audience, saw that NASCAR had a very weird affiliation with the Confederacy and the Confederate flag and the you as of right now you live in the South. You live in the very very
Right.
South in
Yep.
Alabama.
Mobile, Alabama. Yep.
So you don't you can't speak about it because you have lived elsewhere and in other places and you've seen a lot of stuff and you're outside of this. But we saw that NASCAR has this Confederacy affection, which is to me, to as a European, as a Greek person who has studied American history, has not lived with Americans or lived in the American society, it's really mind-boggling. Is if someone here in Greece actually flew the Turkish flag, which is
Right.
a no, no, no,
Right.
no. 100 years ago, we had a big, we had the genocide of Armenians. Many people from Izmir and Constantinople left their homes because the neo-Turkish government wanted them. So we don't like Turks. We don't like them anyway. We were 400 years under their suppression in the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
But some of the people are like, yay, let's actually support the part of the civil war that A, lost, B, was pro-slavery.
Right.
I mean, isn't it a bit weird? And your thoughts on that? And if it's good that NASCAR actually banned the Confederate flag and all the symbols of the Confederacy?
Yeah, and the questions of systemic racism in the United States are, of course, well beyond the scope of this podcast.
Yeah, no.
But suffice to say that the history of the Confederacy in the United States is the best word I could come up with is problematic, because there's this whole idea of the lost cause narrative gets talked about a lot, and it's essentially an argument that tries to push aside all of the questions of slavery and all of the attendant horrors, and it was absolutely horrific. And it attempts to couch it in very different terms, that it was more of a question of, honor and the states' rights. Of course, the right that the states were in question were fighting for was the right to keep human slaves.
Yep.
Let's not forget that. And of course, that is in there. When you go back to original source documents and speeches and newspaper articles and the reasons that the southern states officially gave for secession, yes, it's all about slavery. But it gets heavily romanticized.
Like the South, that's different from the North, and we in the South try to maintain our culture, and we are different. And in a way, the South is different. They are French influenced. They have the more agricultural background. But I mean, agricultural background which had slaves also. So
right, and that's the thing, is when we look at the genteel Southern life, like for example, when we look at, say, Gone with the Wind, I think that's a movie a lot of people in Europe may have seen.
Yeah.
It's easy to think that, okay, there are elements of Southern life prior to the Civil War that were genteel and refined. Well, okay, Yes, but the gentility and refinement was built on the backs of human slavery. So
Yeah.
these genteel things would not exist apart from the horrific oppression and slavery. And we can talk about how, yes, the poor whites were treated fairly poorly by the rich whites as well, but the fun part, of course, is that the poor whites were not slaves.
Yeah,
You know?
they were free men, and
Yes.
that whole thing is romanticized and expressed in a motorsport
Yes. And
category, and that's really weird. That's what really makes me think that NASCAR did well to ban the Confederate symbols and the flag and all that stuff.
yeah, I agree that it was absolutely the right thing to do. And I will admit that I have not looked into attendance figures at NASCAR races, particularly because, of course, COVID has complicated everything dramatically. But I would be willing to bet that the attendance did not suffer too terribly much from banning Confederate symbols. I think that a lot of the people who claimed that they would never watch NASCAR again like a lot of people who say, I am never doing X again, and then maybe didn't do it for a week, but then very quietly went right back to it.
Yeah. It's not like you will stop watching a category, a motorsport series or anything that you actually like because it doesn't allow you to actually flag the loser, to actually bear the loser flag, which is really weird because they lost. But okay.
And that's the funny thing too, is the treatment of the Confederate flag in the United States is frankly bizarre to me. And so much of it, I could talk at great length about it. But one, it's not the actual flag of the Confederacy. The actual Confederate flag was different.
This is what? This is a newer version or something?
No, the most common version of the stars and bars would, in fact, be the Confederate Navy Jack. So it was not the actual flag of the Confederacy.
Okay.
So when people talk about heritage, not hate, it's like, okay, let's unpack this. But no, it's like, so why aren't you flying the actual Confederate flag? Were your ancestors in the Confederate Navy? If not, then what are you doing? And
it's even more weird.
These things, it is so weird, Dimitris, living here. My family is from Alabama. My mom's family is from Alabama. I have deep roots here in this state. And I love living here in so many ways. There are things about it that drive me absolutely crazy. I'll just leave it at that.
So 2021.
It's not an uncritical. Let's just say it's not an uncritical acceptance of where I live.
Yeah. So 2021 calendar and the possibility of everyone being spent by December next year. First things first, we have to say that it's a bit far-fetched that they will actually do 23 Grand Prix. I think with the COVID pandemic not being halted, and even with the vaccine or the vaccines. By the way, sidebar. Did you know that the Pfizer CEO is Greek?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so it's a joke. Everyone in Greece, we say wherever you go, every rock you pull up, there's a Greek hiding, because we are everywhere. Let's admit it. I mean, we have a wide diaspora.
Yes.
Diaspora is a Greek word.
Right.
So yeah, in USA and Australia. So Pfizer has a CEO that's I believe he's Jew, but Greek Jew, of course. And he was born in Thessaloniki, and then he moved to USA to study, and then he went on with his life there. And that's a sidebar, because I want to say it, and I want to see your reaction, and you were like, oh, really? Okay. Here in Greece, when we learned it, half of us were like, oh, come on. He's just Greek. He's not the god. And the other was like, see, Greeks are the best. Greeks find everything. And of course, the anti vaccine guys are like, and girls, of course, I do not discriminate. They are both equally stupid. They are like, oh, yeah, of course. He's not Greek, he's Jew, you know? They're like, end of sidebar. So 2021, even with the vaccine and the some of the remedies that we have found to actually help those people who have had the coronavirus and they have contracted it, I don't think we will be able to have a 23 Grand Prix calendar. But even let's say we do, it's a bit on the very much oh my god stop it side of things, because first things first, I do not approve the Saudi Arabia race at all.
Mhm.
Not even a little, even though my job is to cover it if it happens, and I will mostly do. And if for any reason I have to visit the place in the future, I will. I'm not in a position to say no, nor do I want to, because it's my job and I've signed up to it. But I'm not happy. And then I'm not happy with the fact that we really look eastward. Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Malaysia before that, Bahrain, China. I do not include Japan or Australia because they were there before, many years before any of the other Asian rounds, because Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi are all Asian. They are, of course, Arabic countries, but they are Asian.
Right.
They are Middle Eastern. Um, it's really mind-boggling. And when you look at the Western Hemisphere, which is Canada, USA, Brazil, Mexico, you're like, only four? Like, only America is like, the US, of course, I mean, is like 51, how many states? 51?
50.
50 different countries. It's 50
Yeah,
different countries.
yeah.
Like, get a race there, not something that tries to be a race, because Miami-Dade tries, but it will not succeed, most likely.
Right.
Try to do it, because my personal thought is like, okay, China is 5 hours ahead. So I have to wake up early. The other Asian races are in a good distance from me. But for you, it is absolutely atrocious. And the European rounds for Americans, they are horrible. And then 23, and they can't find a place in America. Go to Indy. I mean, they can't go to Indy. Penske is like, yeah, sure, come in. Roger is a good fella. He will let them in. So my question to you is this: apart from the 23, or if we will have 23 Grand Prix calendar, which is doubtful, do you believe that we go eastwards way, way, way outside of proportion? Like we are eating those petrol dollars with a big spoon.
Yeah, and I mean that's the tricky thing, isn't it? Because to a degree, modern Formula One is so dependent on heavy investment because the circuits have to have certain standards. They have to maintain a certain level of facility. You certainly have to have good infrastructure to support the logistical efforts of getting all the teams and equipment and everything to and from. You have to have reliable electricity supplies. You have to have reliable fuel supplies. And in countries that perhaps have been only recently would consider themselves developed, or in the developing world, you're typically not going to get this level of development or investment without a certain amount of hardship. And I think I feel like there is a certain amount of chasing the money. And because, of course, as we know, Bernie Ecclestone's philosophy was essentially, well, as long as the check clears, I don't care. He was very much about who has the dollars. or euros or pounds or whatever currency you want. You know, who has the cash?
Who has the mullah?
And yeah, exactly. And so this is a good question. And on the one hand, I think that sport is important. I think motorsport is something that has a very broad appeal. I think that most people, you're going to find an audience anywhere for motorsport, because to a certain percentage of humans, it's just really, really cool. You know, we love the cars going around. We love the noise. We love
the speed,
the spectacle. We love the speed. There's so much about it that's just really neat. But unfortunately, there are no countries on the 2021 calendar without at least some human rights problems. And I think the argument that Saudi Arabia and others have been attempting to, as Amnesty International says, sport wash their reputations. And this is not merely a problem for Formula One. You know, look at football. FIFA is, you know, I don't even need to say anything more than I just say, hey, look what's going on with FIFA, right? You know, that whole
what a hot mess.
Yeah, it's a big, it's a big question, you know, and it's tricky, because I do think I have kind of an interesting perspective as an American, though, because I've lived in Japan. I've lived overseas. I've studied international studies. My academic background is in Asian studies, and I did a lot of graduate level work on international relations.
Yep.
So I definitely have a broader perspective than a lot of Americans, and so I see that it's a tough question to answer, because on the one hand, I do think that everybody deserves to have a chance to be entertained. I do think that it's not a bad thing to have sport, but the trick then becomes when you have oppressive regimes using sport to buff their international image, that gets really, really tricky. And I think that it's a big question of, you know, for me, the geography of it is more about the logistics and the purported attempts at sustainability, necessarily more than the some of the more overtly political aspects. I think that F1 could do a lot to advance the cause of human rights. I think that especially if F1 is careful about what contracts they sign and what they include as their requirements for these events, it can be a useful lever to move the elites, the ruling classes of these countries, to move them perhaps towards a little bit more of a desirable human rights stance. Of course, Formula One's not going to save the world, not by a long shot. I mean, I very clear-eyed on this, but it's a rather tricky. It's a bigger question, and of course, you know, we're not going to be able to do it justice in this podcast simply because of time. Because I mean, we could write. I am sure there will be books written about this in the coming years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have a problem per se with looking east. I have a problem with some of the places that F1 goes. You know, Azerbaijan is not great.
Russia.
You know, Russia is not great. Bahrain is certainly not great.
China.
And so on and so forth. You know, China, the discussions of a Vietnamese Grand Prix, it's a really, really tough moment for any globalized entity, because we see so many places with so much trouble. I mean, in Canada right now, the indigenous people's rights and the treatment of the indigenous peoples is in sharp display. It's been a big, big deal, and everybody looks at Canada and says, "Oh, you know, Canada, they're really great."
They always say sorry
nice.
And stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we love Canada, but it's like, well, the First Nations people in Canada might want to tell you some stories that would make you feel a little less great about Canada.
The indigenous people that live near Alaska, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
The northern parts.
Yeah, it's you know, Canada has its own human rights issues. The United States, of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
and not only with indigenous people.
Right. I mean, it's very fraught, and I certainly don't mean to I don't mean to sound like I'm equivocating or or saying that oh gosh, everybody's equally bad. But I certainly think that we need to be aware that a lot of countries. I personally would prefer that F1 use its position as leverage in these repressive regimes to say, hey, look, we expect you guys to stop being so horrible, or we are going to pull out. Once our contract is up, we're done here. And I think that would have the threat of taking it away in a very public manner, I think could have positive knock-on effects. And it's a tricky issue, and among the F1 journalists, the people that actually get paid to write about this stuff, I see there's definitely a difference of opinion. I personally take the side of, hey, let's not go to any more repressive regimes. And I think that F1 should in turn around and say, okay, guys, contract time's up. Do you want us to stay on? Well, here's what we want from you. And it's the trick is, Bernie established this baseline of being overtly apolitical, but of course it's a joke to say he was not political, because every decision on this level is a very political decision. His politics followed the money. And so that is a very political attitude for him to take. And so it's really tricky. But yeah, I think that the choices of where the races are run could have been better. But we're dealing with some legacy issues here too.
The part that, finds me absolutely on the other side of the argument, because I don't like the Saudi Arabia race, I don't like the Bahrain race. As of the human rights issue thing, Bahrain is a great track, has a great track in the Sakir region. Sorry. But, I try to understand the argument that, okay, F1 may... I think Lewis Hamilton said it also, that we can actually try and help these countries. But the Saudi Arabia example is something that I have studied a lot because of the sports aspect of the Vision 2030, because Saudi Arabia, of course, if no one, I'm sure you know, but if someone from the audience that listens to us doesn't know, Vision 2030 is, self-explanatory. It's the vision of the, the Saudi family, the King Saud family, to actually westernize, if that's even a verb, the Saudi Arabia society, and they are image to the rest of the world, and the investors that, they know the Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince and soon to be king, does really know that oil and natural gas, it will run out, and Saudi Arabia has to produce money because, when you have money, you want more. No one wants less money. Even when you don't have money, you want more money. So they try to be a bit of a technological, mecca, but they already have a mecca, but they want to be a technological cornerstone of the world, and they want to have investors and all that stuff. And Formula One and Formula E before it, and Qatar tries to do the same with the World Cup, the 2022 World Cup, and rest assured, China wants to have a better image to the Western world. No one wants to know about the Uyghurs and the Muslim minorities, and if you ask, not a lot of people know about it because it's not talked a lot of. It's not talked a lot in Western media. Maybe some big US outlets try to do it because US and China are not friends, but so every country that has F1 really tries to project an image to the world that's close to the Western stereotype, and I'm sure that a lot of people will say, well, Western is Western, Eastern is Eastern, they are different cultures, we don't have to say that this is wrong because it's not us. Well, I don't have a problem with hijab, I have a problem when you hit someone, and you hit someone because it's a woman, because he's or
Right.
she's LGBTQ plus, a member of the LGBTQ plus community, um, or happens to be Christian or atheist.
Right.
So that's a problem. I don't have a problem with the hijab or the Muslims or no one should have a problem, or the Chinese or the communist Chinese regime, which is a quasi-democracy, quasi-communism.
Right.
I don't have a problem with these principles. Every country governs itself with a different principle, and I'm sure no democracy is perfect. If any country has really a democratic government nowadays, I'm not sure. But the problem is, and the problem starts and ends when all these countries are not undemocratic or theocratic. I don't mind with that. I have a problem with the complete violation of human rights, of human decency, of people staying in power because they oppress other people. I really
Hmm.
can't fathom it. I won't be able and to fathom it. And if one goes to these places, yeah, maybe as you said, with the promise of well, try to be better next time. Okay, I mean, I don't think this will work. I don't think it will ever work because Saudi Arabia lives, and the Saudi family lives from this, from the oppression, from
Right.
the continuation of these policies that find minorities or people that oppose the regime on the wrong side of the stick, which is even death sometimes.
Hmm.
A colleague of mine, Jamal Khashoggi, was murdered
Right.
in Istanbul. So,
Yes.
on the consulate
Right.
of Saudi Arabia. So, that's what I think. I'm sure
Hmm.
everyone will not stop going there because you and I or a lot of other people are opposed to it. But we race as one and end racism are good, you know, slogans. They are good mottos. But to many, many, many people, and as we saw in the US elections, which I followed very closely because I am that kind of guy. I don't pride on being such a nerd, but I am a kind of nerd. And I watched the US elections. I really, really paid attention to them. I read both sides of the argument, the far right, which we all know who is, and the decent side, which again we all know who is. And I tried to see like where is the world going, and all the issues that everyone tries to touch are, to some people, are life and death issues. The end racism to a black guy from Atlanta, Georgia, is not a motto. Is a way of life. Just stop being racist to me. To me, a white Caucasian, white Greek citizen of Athens is nothing. And racism. So what? I haven't been subject to racism ever in my life. I will not ever be, maybe, unless I go to a post-apocalyptic universe where bald white guys are, well, not accepted. But which is me. But you know, it's so mind-boggling that F1 we race as one, and racism, yeah, but you know, the
Right.
the countries that you visit are not, they do not support this message. So yeah, maybe, the 23 calendar won't happen. Maybe Jeddah won't happen. Vietnam won't happen, as we know. Um, and my question is, if to go away from the discrimination and the politics, or the human decency stuff, not politics. What do you think will be the fourth race that right now is an empty slot in the calendar? Do you think it will be one of the races that we actually saw this year as you know outliers? Maybe Germany, Nürburgring, or Istanbul, or Portimao.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my wish on that, honestly, that slot would stay empty because the calendar is just too full. But if we had to have a race, I would really like to. I mean, I thought that Portimao was just so fun. I would love to see that, but I would love to see Germany represented because it is definitely a legacy F1 place. Whether it be Hockenheim or the Nürburgring. There are things to love about both tracks, but I would love to see. Yeah, Portimao was just so fun. It was such a good technical track, and the drivers obviously enjoyed it so much. It would be fun to see them back there. But yeah, it's. I mean, if I had my wish, the teams would get that week off because they're going from Australia to Bahrain to China, and then the next race on the other side of the to be determined is in Spain, and then we're in Europe for a bit, and then we're across the Atlantic, and then we're back across the Atlantic, and then we're going to putter around in Europe a little more, and then we're in Russia, and then we're back east again in Singapore and Japan, and then hey, we're all the way back in the Americas, and then hey, we're all the way back in the Middle East again.
Yeah. Well, why don't we have we used to do the Canada and US rounds back to back, I think on the start of June. Why don't we do it now? Is it because Texas is a hot mess in June?
Well, I think that having been in San Antonio, not Austin, but having been in San Antonio in June, the first part of June tends to be pretty nice, but it rapidly gets very uncomfortable. Some of it, but then again, I think that there could be attention paid to making the calendar geographically a little more consistent.
Making sense.
To make sense and to not be... We talk about sustainability in motorsport. F1, of course, talks about its commitments to sustainability. But then I look at where the races are, and you're right, it just geographically, it doesn't make sense. It's dumb. And I realize this is more a result of, hey, this country wants to have a race. When can we fit that in? It's like, we got a couple of weeks over here. We got a couple of weeks over there. And so it wasn't necessarily made. The calendar, I don't think, was developed over time with any sense of good flow. I think it just kind of grew organically, unsupervised. And now we're in the mess we are, where we're crossing oceans for reasons that probably made sense once upon a time, but they don't align with a lot of things such as sustainability, reducing our carbon emissions, being comfortable for the teams. I mean, at least when we have a lot of the races in Europe, it is much easier, not easy, but easier for the teams to at least maybe get a day at home.
Yeah.
The support staff can at least go see their families once a week. But with this type of just incredibly drawn out road schedule, I just keep coming back to the poor guys and gals who they don't get to stay in the nice hotels. They don't get the private jets. They're flying commercial. They're flying economy class. They take a bus from the airport to the hotel kind of thing. And they don't have the masseurs, and they don't have the personal trainers, and they don't have the personal chefs. So, I just think about the poor schmucks in steerage,
Not the bourgeoisie. I mean, let's say the top level guys and the drivers, of course, who demand them.
Right.
The better part of the attention.
Toto and Lewis get to fly private jets, but Christian Horner gets to fly private jets, whether they own them or just, charter them for purpose. That's still so far away from the experience of the staff.
Of going to business class or economic class and actually traveling there as a part of your work, or
Right.
worse in Europe, driving from race to race, because in Europe,
Right.
the Germany, Austria, France, Italy, Belgium part of the calendar really can be driven, not flew with an airplane. So yeah,
Right. It's something where, for heck, in some parts of the U.S., that whole calendar that would just be an afternoon's road trip.
yeah,
That far along. I mean, drive when you consider, if you've not been to the United States, if you've not traveled by road in the United States, particularly if you've not driven across Texas.
with the
Texas
flood.
is ridiculously huge.
Yeah,
I mean, Texas is gigantic in ways that, if you've never been, even as an American, driving across Texas is an experience in just how big places can be. And, Europe, of course, everything is much closer. And this is the part where, if I had visual aids, I would overlay Texas with a map of Europe and just say, okay, guys, this is what we're dealing with. But
Texas is like 3 countries from Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how big it is. And I mean, my family, I think about, from where I live in Mobile to my nearest relatives in Dothan, Alabama, which is on the other side of the state. It's only about 3 hours. It's only about 4 hours by road to my mom's house in Florida. But, in Europe, 4 hours by road
Is another country.
It gets you a completely different experience than in the US. So, of course, my sense of distance and my sense of scale and my sense of a calendar, I'm going to have, I think, of necessity, just by the geography of where I live, is going to be shaped very differently than what, your European audience is going to perceive for distance.
Yeah, because if we take 3 hours from Athens, we're still in the same country. My village is 3.5 hours from Athens, 5 hours for Thessaloniki. To get out of the country, you maybe need 8 or 9 hours. So to get out of the country, not out of the state that you could say it's a country in some aspects. As I say, 50 different countries that combined and they seceded to a union in order to make peace with themselves. But, sometimes F1 really doesn't make sense, and it's driven by money and all that stuff. And driven by money is the 2021 grid. So this is the last part, the epilogue of the podcast, this particular episode. So, okay, we know that Lewis will sign a new agreement. Lance will sign a new agreement as well with soon to be Aston Martin. What else? We got a pretty covered grid. Yuki Tsunoda, the Japanese driver from F2, will get the seat in Alpha Tauri. But actually, do you call it Alpha Tauri or Alpha Tauri? Do you?
I usually will pronounce it Alpha Tauri myself.
Oh, something in between.
Yeah,
in your typical American accent.
Right. Yeah. I don't. I certainly don't speak Italian, so I can't flavor it with the good, Italian flavor.
No. It's pretty. No. I mean, Tauri. It's Greek. It's Stavros.
Well, right. I know the word does originally, come from the Greek. Yeah.
For us,
Alpha, of course. Again, it's nice Greek words. Yeah, I should be smarter. But I was boxing along for many years. I should, but again, because it was Toro Rosso, it comes out of Italy. So I keep, I get stuck in that Italian mindset. Yeah.
You're going to say it like that. Yeah.
So. But I mean, heck, should I say Alfa Romeo? Should I say, Alfa Romeo like they would say it in the French or German-speaking parts of Switzerland, since it used to be Sauber? How do I manage that? I don't know. I'm an American. I don't know these things.
Haas is pretty self-explanatory. Haas, it's Haas. Haas. It's very Californian. It's very Canapolis. Where is Canapolis? Is it California? Yeah.
No, Canapolis is in. Oh gosh.
Isn't it in California?
It's no, Kannapolis is on the East Coast.
Are you sure? Okay, so let me look out for it, and I will tell you.
North Carolina.
Nah, it's not. Are Haas headquarters in North Carolina?
Yep.
What? That's so not cool. I used to. Oh my God! Yeah, Kannapolis, North Carolina.
Yep.
North Carolina? Like
Yep.
seriously?
Yep.
Two good things
And
from North Carolina then. Michael Jordan and.
Yeah, and it's not only in the United States; it's technically in the South of the United. It's part of the South.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, poor Haas. Anyway, so Alpha Tauri, Yuki Tsunoda, and Pierre Gasly, of course, he has signed. So we have two. Actually, in Haas, yeah, two empty seats. One, we presume and we think that will be covered by Mick Schumacher, the son of seven-time world champion Michael Schumacher, or to be fair, son of Corinna Betts as well. He has a mother. It was not like his dad. It's not Zeus. His dad is not Zeus. We actually know his mother. So his mother is Corinna, and the other seat, it's a bit more open. My sources say that Nikita Mazepin is about to sign, but he hasn't yet, as of the time of this recording, which is 21st of November for you, 22nd November for me. He hasn't signed because he doesn't have the super license points yet, and if he doesn't get them, FIA will step in, and the provision they have set up for this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic issues, they will accept the participation of a driver who hasn't got the 40 super license points he needs. He has 30. He may get to 40 if he wins a race or gets in the top 5, I presume. And then you have Rob Schwarzman, who is another Russian guy. He's a part of the FDA, the Ferrari Driver Academy, of course. He's a rookie in the F2 category. He has the most wins out of anyone this year, which is pretty cool. If you see the grid, they are pretty talented this year. I actually interviewed Guan Yu Zhu, the Chinese Renault F1 Driver Academy driver.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
cool.
Yeah. It was the first time I interviewed an F2 driver, and he was pretty cool. And pity that he will not get a seat. So in F1.
Yeah.
So Mazepin or Schwarzman, and it's talent versus money? Is it,
Yeah, I think that's really kind of how it breaks down, doesn't it?
Because, exposure, you have exposure. Mick will surely sell a lot of merchandise. A lot of people will bear Haas cups because of the number that Mick will choose.
Right.
But, Nikita Mazepin is a Russian son. Is like Lance Stroll, but not so talented. Lance is talented. On the other hand, you have Schwarzman, who has lost his father. It's a bit of a more Leclerc type of story.
Yeah, and I don't know much about Schwarzman's background, unfortunately.
He's the last GP3. He's the first F3 champion in 2019. His first season in F2 was this year, and his rookie year, meaning, and he has been absolutely sensational this year. And to think that he hasn't a firm grasp of the seat in Haas because Mazepin and his rubles, I should say, not dollars. Well, isn't that a pity? Isn't that a pity generally? Haas is a team that really needs the money.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes, which is what led us to some of the amusement with Rich Energy a couple years ago.
Yeah, Haas really needs the money, and I mean, it's a pity because of course, you need the um, funds to actually go out and race. But yeah, on the other hand, you feel like we could have done so much better with a better driver and all that stuff. Yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
So to cap it off, 2021. How would you like to see next season pan out? I'm sure, okay, less than 23 races, but
Yeah, less than 23 races. I would love to see Lewis Hamilton take his 8th title.
oh, really?
I would. Yeah, I want to see him. I want him to keep winning as long as he's in the sport. I want him to keep dominating. What I would like to see, though, is I would like to see the cost caps next year actually have a meaningful impact on the performance of the top teams. I would like to see the playing field much more level. I would like to see the machinery become much closer to parity, because really it's like we're dealing with almost like a multi-class race right now, where you've got your Mercedes, you've got your Red Bull, and, Racing Point's been doing pretty well. Of course, a lot of people like to joke about how they basically just copied last year's Mercedes. But, we've got these teams that have utterly dominated, and then we've got everybody else. And it's almost like where, I love Mercedes dominance because I've been a Mercedes fan for many years. But at the same time, it's not the most exciting thing to watch on the track. I want them to win. I want Lewis to keep utterly dominating because I love him. I think he's great. I think he's one of the best things to happen to the sport. And he is just such a naturally talented driver. But what I really want, where I've been watching most of the excitement, is in the midfield, because that's where the fun is, right? And I think that, granted, it's not like it was in the Hamilton-Rosberg days where they would finish a minute ahead of everybody else, and where you literally would have to watch the midfield, because otherwise you'd be watching Lewis Hamilton closely followed by Nico Rosberg for 2 hours. That's not exciting racing. It's exciting as these things, though, they can both be true. I want to see Hamilton continue to dominate, but I also want to see a lot more fighting on the track. I don't want to see, it's like I want to see the back of the grid teams have much more of a fighting chance, even though they don't have the just buckets of money to dump on the sport. Where I really want to see things is I want the cost cap to bite, and I want the cost cap to level the field. I don't think it's going to have as big of a bite because of how the cost caps are written. When you look at all the things that are excluded, it still is going to favor the big teams with deep pockets. But at least on track, the machinery will hopefully be a little closer.
Yeah.
I really would like to see, and I know this likely isn't going to happen, I really would like to see Red Bull stop promoting drivers too early, burning them out, and throwing them away. Albon, I think, got brought up too soon, just like Gasly got brought up too soon. Gasly was very fortunate because he was able to land back in the junior team, and he has been doing just tremendously well. And he's a pleasure to watch, and he seems like a nice guy. So I'm so thrilled with what Gasly's been doing on track this season. I think Albon has a lot of good talent. He's just green. He's too unformed yet. He doesn't have the experience necessary. He should have stayed in a junior squad, or perhaps a junior in he should have stayed in a junior series a little longer. What I would like to see is some of, is it time for Kimi Räikkönen to retire? I think yes. He's there. I mean, he's driving, he's delivering, but and I know I'm going to upset all the Kimi fans out there, but I think it's time for him to go, because he doesn't seem to. It's just a job. He doesn't seem to bring a lot of passion to it. Then again, he's never been a very passionate guy, at least in his public persona. But maybe it's time for some of these guys to
get a chance,
make some room, give some younger fellas. I would love to see, and I know this isn't going to happen for 2021, but for the longer term, I would love to see the W Series produce some good contenders who can get the funding and backing necessary to make a challenge in, if not F1, F2, F3, so that they can get into the feeder series for F1, because a lot of these women are just phenomenal racers. They're phenomenal competitors, and I think they would give these guys a run for their money but that's not going to happen next year. I don't know why I'm saying it for next year. It's just something I think should happen.
You hit a spot there because I have arranged a podcast interview with Matt Bishop, the head of communications of W Series.
Oh, nice.
And one of the things that I will ask him is if he thinks that the time is coming for a full-time woman driver, female driver in F1, not a test driver, not someone who will participate in a free practice 1 or free practice 2 session, someone who will go out there for 23 Grand Prix and actually race the other 19 male drivers, which will be pretty interesting. So yeah.
And, I'm a well-off white guy. I don't want to see a bunch of well-off white guys racing all the time. I mean, well-off white guys have done this forever.
There are 19 of them, and one, he's well off now because he's earning like 40 million euros every year, but, he didn't.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad but the trick for me is that, it's like Lewis Hamilton is the guy that's not the same. He's not like everyone else. And we need more of that. We need to see new people coming in. We need to see some new blood in the series. I mean, I'm going to love F1 no matter what happens. It's just like we talked about with NASCAR earlier. It's the racing series I love the most. Just realistically, it would take a lot for them to get me to stop watching. But
if they had to say, "Hey, Tim, we hate you. We hate your guts." And
then I'd watch even more just to make him mad,
Okay, so you're that type of guy, right?
Yeah.
So okay. I mean,
authoritarian streak.
Sure, yeah. I mean, F1 needs diversity, as we've previously in this episode mentioned, every little thing that gets forward and gets on the 21st century kind of, spectrum. It's great for the sport, and every development is great for us as well. Tim, I have to thank you so much for coming.
This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it greatly.
It's 2 a.m. here in Greece, so I may have to edit it and go have some sleep, but it's far greater in your time zone. It's
I'm gonna eat dinner in a few minutes.
You will. I will let you.
Yes.
I will let you do. I will let you eat some dinner. I will eat some candy as well because it's 2 a.m. I am a raccoon. But I have to thank you. It's been a pleasure, an immense pleasure. I always like to talk to people that are not from my country because I get a perspective that it's very valuable to my to broaden my horizons and actually see what's out there. And it's not only you're from another country, you're from another continent.
Yes.
So that's been a pleasure. I hope the audience enjoyed it as well. It was a bonus episode of the.
Yeah. I hope that people did like it. And I have to say in return, thank you so much for inviting me. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you from my side as well. One of the things that I love about modern motorsport, especially Formula One, is that it brings people from all over the world together, and we can enjoy something together. We can disagree about something together. We can argue over something together, but we all come at it from a place where it's something that we all love together. And it's been a great pleasure being on today.
So after the Thanksgiving, if we could say, which is again a celebration that I do not get. You could have, you could like say, hey, thanks every November 30 or something. But no, you have to slaughter a turkey and actually eat it.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about national myths some other time. We've all got our own.
But I should thank you, and it was a pleasure. This was a bonus episode, as I said in the beginning. In Greek, it is an outlier. Tim is the first of a lot of bonus episodes that I have in my mind, but he's the first one that I have done. Maybe not the first that will be uploaded, though. I'm so sorry about it.
Oh, that's
Uh,
okay.
but yeah, because it's it was a great episode, and that's all from me. Of course, for our foreign listeners, if any comes about, we do Greek podcasts. So if you don't know Greek, or if you don't like to listen to a language that you don't understand, don't stay. But if you know Greek, or if you're interested in other bonus episodes of this very Oversteer podcast show, subscribe to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. Stay around. We will have a lot of English speaking podcasts on the future. Thank you so much. Goodbye.